Good evening, America. You're about to listen to me, Sergeant Dave, with the Remember the Fallen podcast. After surviving the instincts of an 8-ton rollover accident in the Parwan province of Afghanistan in 2004, I emerged and returned to the States with an even more enduring tale of perseverance. As I navigate the troubled waters of the VA system, I gain a new perspective and a renaissance that I will share with you with the fever of enthusiasm to all patriots across the windswept fields of America. Yeah, you're about to listen to my guests, which are Jarheads, Marines, Squids, Navy, Wingnuts, Air Force, and we also call them Penguins because 98% of them don't fly jets. And they're going to speak to ground pounders like myself, Army, and an occasional Coastie. Coast Guard? Maybe not. But most of all, I will be advocating to patriots like yourself that get a lump in your throat when you hear the national anthem being played at a ball game. You see, one of us can be run off, two of us can be disregarded, but as show's audience, together, we are a movement. All right, here we are at beautiful Seminole County, USA, on the Winter Springs Oviedo line, and we're in the beautiful YouTube Remember the Fallen studio. And tonight's podcast is going to be basically looked into at a great article that was given, and it was out of the AMAC, and I just see these articles that are jumping out at me, and I'm just going to share them with you because it's so important to educate a lot of us out there that just not listen to real news. I mean, the fake news is taking over. So this is AMAC is a Association of Mature American Citizens. That's why this article is not that we're bashing the younger youth, the Generation Z, the millennials, but we're trying to get them to understand what really socialism is. And the premise of my organization, neverforgottenmemorials.org, go on the website, is to educate the youth on the sacrifices of our soldiers that give us our freedom of liberties today. That was really the first premise. So when I saw this article, this really jumped out at me. So it was personal to me. So we're going to talk this article about who's going to pay for it. America's delusioned youth turn to the freebies of socialism. Socialism is gaining support among Americans' younger generation more than any before. Many who support socialism, like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, have rebranded it as a democratic socialism, perhaps in an attempt to distance themselves from the negative connotation the word holds in the mind of an average American. The reality is that does not change the definition at all. Socialism is socialism. The dictionary defines socialism as a political and economic theory of social organization which advocates the means of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. 61% of Americans between the ages of 18 and 24 view socialism in a positive light. Now, I've seen this at UCF. When I was there, I was doing a pretty much like a study. I had to gain some more student veterans of America to build up, to recruit for our team over there at the VARC. And that stands for Veterans Academic Resource Center. So we wanted some more students involved. And so I thought the best way to find a student that might be involved with the VARC was to go out there during the busiest part of the day at the Mall of Millennia by the American flag, where it crisscrosses classes. So within like 30 minutes, I saw over 400 students, and I was trying to approach students that wore red, white, and blue, an American flag, anything that represented patriotism. Well, out of 400, I only found 2. This was worrisome to me. I was concerned, and probably another good reason why I started this podcast is to educate, to bring it out, to unfold what's going on in our universities today and also in our high schools and our elementary and middle schools. How history is being retaught, how wars are being redefined and how they're explaining them, and like the soldier's a bad guy, So that's one of the reasons why I took on the podcast show, was to kind of just educate the youth and my organization. So go to the website, www.neverforgottenmemorials.org, and you see what I'm doing, how I'm trying to educate the youth with community events. That's the only way to get out there, is within the community. So once again, the majority of Americans' youth view socialism as a means for social justice, and view capitalism as only benefiting people of privilege. Our youth support for wealth redistribution is also evident in a Harris poll, which found that a large majority of youth, millennials, and Generation Z are more likely to embrace socialism and the policies associated than past generations. According to the poll conducted in February 2019, 73.2% of millennials and Generation Z believe government should provide universal health care, and 67% think college should be tuition free. Hey, that's why a lot of us in the past generation, right, we joined ROTC, or we went for scholarships, right? Nothing was for free. We don't believe in freebies in our past generations. That's why it's so important to educate the youth. You can't keep having your hand out, okay? So it is clear that socialism sounds better as a concept to younger people compared to those 50 and older like myself. Whether these positive narratives about socialism have their beginnings in high school or college, reinforced by media and other institutions, we must educate our youth on the dangers inherent in that form of government and social structure. History shows socialism has failed throughout the world in all its forms, including Marxism, Leninism, and the Soviet Union, Maoism in China, state socialism in India, democratic socialism in Sweden, and national socialism in Nazi Germany. These countries have been forced to adopt capitalistic measures to counterbalance the mess created by socialism. There's a private ownership of railroads now, and airlines in the United Kingdom, special economic zones in China, and open markets and foreign investment in Sweden. Time and time again, socialism has created governments more powerful than the people they purport to serve. America didn't become the greatest nation on the globe by chance. We arose to become the world's top superpower through hard work and rugged individualism. Like the last episode, grit. Yeah, we did grit in the past generations and all along the 1900s, the Industrial Revolution. It was all about grit. Keep that in mind. So capitalism invigorates an individual rise to the greatest economic heights through the fundamental but currently jeopardized right for businesses and citizens to reap the fruits of their labor. Socialism has never brought prosperity and instead encourages a people to embrace mediocrity. I am noticing that with my own child, okay? So I'm feeling this pain here, okay? So that leaves our country vulnerable to new enemies, foreign and domestic. The positive narratives offered about socialism touted by Bernie Sanders and the gang and the like resonate well with the generation told their struggles are not their fault, but are instead caused by the system. The millennials are the first generation set to be worse off than their parents. So you can imagine how they're being brainwashed, okay, from the Democratic Party. So I'm seeing that. They want their votes, okay? So the cost of college has doubled since 1996, and healthcare costs similarly have ballooned. Moreover, most young Americans no longer have access to their pensions their parents and grandparents relied on. It's no wonder, then, that the promise of free healthcare and free college sounds too good to pass up. And while many young Americans have some sort of side job, those wages are not keeping up with the rising costs. COLA. It's sad but true that far too many young Americans are struggling to make ends meet. It should come as no surprise then that the Heritage Foundation reported that roughly 2 million people under the age of 30 voted for Democratic Socialist Bernie Sanders in the 2016 presidential election. Quiet, underground socialists are a thing of the past. The people who desire a shift towards socialism are outspoken about their beliefs. Sanders placed himself in the midst of the young people struggling under college debt and promised them free college, health care, and racial, economic, and climate justice. Sanders' solution on how to pay for it all is to tax the rich. For all the generations before, they think the answer is to tax the rich, tax the grit. All right, that's what I call it. No, we're not going to tax the grit. The problem many young people face is the delusionment created by these democratic socialists. They believe that those who have worked hard and become successful are to blame for the many of the country's problems. Rather than celebrating the hard work that leads to the American dream, Sanders and politicians like him condemn that dream, unless it is handed out freely to all who want it. Freebies. That may sound heavenly, but history shows conclusively that wherever that type of radical change was attempted, the result was failure. Socialism is not only responsible for crumbling economy, it's also responsible for more than 100 million deaths. Harvard University Press published research in the Black Book of Communism that documents the awful truth that in each and every Marxist socialist regime, the only way to gain power through was the death of others. While socialism written ideals are understandably tempting for Americans' frustrated youth, reality paints a far less pleasing picture. Socialism goals has always been to shift power from the people toward a central government, ultimately destroying the successes of the working class. Truth behind socialism isn't the sudden availability of free and harmony things in classes of society of joy. It's the ideology simply doesn't work. That is, except for the dictates behind so much death and destruction. It doesn't take a degree from Harvard's Kennedy School of Government to recognize that socialism is not the solution. I want to thank Ben Ferguson, author, TV political commentator, and the host of the Daily Ben Ferguson Show and podcast, for this great article that I could not avoid showing. Hopefully we're going to have some young youths in the audience, but more than likely not. But hopefully you can speak to your children about this socialism. That's what's going on. It's going to destroy our youth. All right, it's that time. We're going to take care of our sponsors. So all you fit veterans in the audience, get down and give me 22 everyday push-ups for the veterans that will die of suicide tomorrow. Go ahead, get down.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign. Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans, America's largest mortgage lender. Spring will be here soon, so if buying a new home is on your to-do list, right now is the time to call Quicken Loans. Learn about which mortgage options make sense for you and get a jump on your competition. With our exclusive Rate Shield approval, the low rate you lock today is protected for up to 90 days while you shop for your new home. With a Rate Shield approval, if rates go up, your low rate stays locked. But if rates go down, you get that new, even lower rate. Either way, you win. Talk to us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com to take advantage. Here's another great reason to work with us. For a record 9 years in a row, J.D. Power has ranked Quicken Loans highest in the nation in customer satisfaction for primary mortgage origination. Again, to lock in today's low mortgage interest rate and get the security of our exclusive Rate Shield approval, call us today at 800-QUICKEN or go to rocketmortgage.com. For J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com. Rate Shield approval only valid on certain 30-year fixed rate loans. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030. Hi, welcome to the Subway ad for the new Sesame Ginger Glazed Chicken Signature Wrap. How would you like it? I'll take a sports announcer at home. Yeah? How'd you? We just know.
My wife picks up the new signature wrap. It's got double the rotisserie-style chicken mixed with a sesame ginger glaze. She appears annoyed at me, but she shrugs it off. Those sweet and savory flavors are calling her name. She lifts the wrap and she takes the bite. Incredible! And now she's closing the door on my... Subway, make it what you want.
Limited time only at participating restaurants. Double meat based on average 6-inch sub.
I'm little teapot, short and stout.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
No, Dad, my
DISILLUSIONED.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council. KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
A 1.25% fee to receive this discounted rate. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. License in all 50 states. NMLS number 3030.
Topping pizzas for $7.99 each, and with carry-out insurance, we'll remake your pizza for free if anything happens to it after you leave the store, even if it's not your fault, like if it's a flash hailstorm's fault. Oh no. Or if it's a bee in your car's fault. Go, get out of here. Or even if it is your fault for taking song lyrics entirely too literally. You must ask for this limited time carry-out offer. Prices and participation may vary. Insurance coverage for this promotion applies exclusively to Domino's Pizza LLC, its affiliates, and franchisees. Restrictions apply. See Domino's.com.
All right, we're back at the Never Forgotten Memorial YouTube studio in beautiful Seminole County, USA on the Winter Springs Oviedo line. And I'm catching that sunset. Like I was telling you, I enjoy the beautiful sunset. I relax, I reflect as I'm doing the podcast. I open my door, I can see the sunset in my backyard while I'm doing the show live. Isn't that cool? All right, so it would be impartial if I didn't cover the student loan crisis that's going on. You know, student loan balances have skyrocketed over the past 30 years, a generation. The nation's student debt load is now $1.5 trillion, an increase of 50% since 2013. A total of 44.7 million borrowers owe an average of $34,000 in debt. How did we get here? 44.7 million borrowers? That's a lot of people just jumping on the bandwagon, trying to get a free tuition, trying to get grants. Yeah, it was like we're imploding from the inside. It was called FAFSA. Yeah, the acronym FAFSA. I saw it at UCF when I was there, and I'm already getting free tuition. Then they found other ways to get other free stuff. I'm like, how is this going on? Yeah. So eventually it imploded. It was so easy to access this information on the internet, and that people could not prove what they were applying for. So I think that had a lot to do with the implosion that's going on right now. And that's just for a regular 4-year degree. It gets worse for those seeking postgraduate degrees, and the average loan balance for physician borrowing now exceeds $160,000. I couldn't imagine graduating from school, not having a job, and owing $160,000 in student loan debt. How do you get out from under that debt? It must be very stressful. So these balances have ballooned as college costs continue to increase. But that doesn't tell the full story, does it? There's something hidden there. Borrowers, particularly those with larger balances, often defer payment instead of defaulting it, right? In those situations, interest continues to accumulate and loan balances continue to grow. This has become a growing problem as the number of large loans has grown. On an inflation-adjusted basis in 1990, only 2% of borrowers owed $50,000 in debt. That number soared to 17% by 2015. So we have two clusters of problem borrowers. Smaller borrowers who are defaulting on their debts, and larger borrowers who are deferring their debts while the balance grows. Now, one might wonder why individuals keep taking on these debts. Well, the simplest answer is that, on average, college does pay. I really feel the parents have some blame. Why are they not telling their kids about the ROTC program? Why aren't they telling them to join the National Guard, Army Reserve for your free education? Why aren't they telling them to work more diligently, more aggressive, have grit, take on sports, go for a scholarship through the sports, right? So we can't continue to just let our younger generation get on the internet and find these ways to avoid working hard, mediocrity. Once again, let's try another avenue than just trying to climb into debt, right? So for those facing debt burdens, seeking forbearance or deferrals early on may make sense. Yeah, it does make sense, right? In the event of default, there are also strategies to both rehabilitate and consolidate one's loans. There's a wealth of information to be found on the web regarding courses of action. Hey, since the web probably got us in trouble, I'm glad they have a wealth of information regarding courses of action to get out of this trouble, right? So our one specific piece of advice is that avoidance is by far the worst strategy. For those considering college and taking on loans, our best advice is to consider what you're buying. Be a wise shopper. You should be paying for an education, not a 4-year or longer vacation. Ask yourself whether it makes sense to start at a community college, which I did. I went to Seminole State, got my 2-year associates, and then I did a direct connect to UCF. Now, do you need to go to a private institution? Or do you need to be in an exotic location? Not. Or does it make sense to be closer to home? I agree, closer to home. That's what I want my daughter to do. You might consider working. And that's what I have my daughter doing now while she's a senior at high school. She's working part-time as a hostess. So you might consider working and going to school part-time and consider what you would do with your education. It's all right to consider a path that does not lead to riches, but it makes no sense to borrow so much to do so that you end up on a path to ruin. And finally, a last piece of advice is to discover the virtues of frugality. In the end, a modest lifestyle may be the simplest solution of all. I want to thank you, Stephen Foyer of CFA, for that great article on our student loan debt crisis. It's getting dark, 0:30 for the show, and I'm just about ready to go into rack ops mode. But before I relax, one last promo. So go to Sergeant Dave Matthews at gmail.com, SGTDaveMatthews at gmail.com for suggestions for the show's content. And if you know a good piece of gear, a veterans advocate, I will get him on the show and do a show with that individual as well. And you can also go to my website, www.neverforgottenmemorials.org. We could use some volunteers or some donations on that website. And you can go to my Facebook page. It's all one word, Remember the Fallen. Like the page. And also you can go to my Twitter handle at Heroic Memorials. So once again, until all our troops come home, God bless America.